Sarah J. Maas. The Assassins. Blade. As one. Seated in the council room of the Assassin's Keep, Selena Sardothene leaned back in her chair. It's past 4 in the morning, she said, adjusting the folds off her crimson silk dressing gown and crossing her bare legs beneath the wooden table. This had better be important. Perhaps if I hadn't been reading all night, you wouldn't be so exhausted, snapped the young man seated across from her. She ignored him and studied the 4 other people assembled in the underground chamber, all male, all far older than she, and all refusing to meet her stare. A chill that didn't have to do with the drafty room ran down her spine. Picking at her manicured nails, Selena schooled her features into neutrality. The 5 assassins gathered at the long table, including herself, were 5 of Erabin Hamel's 7 most trusted companions. This meeting was undeniably important. She'd known that from the moment the serving girl pounded on her door, insisting Selena come downstairs and not even bother to get dressed. When Erabin summoned you, you didn't keep him waiting. Thankfully, her sleepwear was as exquisite as her daytime wardrobe, and cost nearly as much. Still, being 16 in a room with men made her keep an eye on the neckline of her robe. Her beauty was a weapon, one she kept honed, but it could also be a vulnerability. Erabin Hamel, king of the assassins, lounged at the head of the table, his auburn hair shining in the light from the glass chandelier. His silver eyes met hers, and he frowned. It might have just been the late hour, but Selena could have sworn that her mentor was paler than usual. Her stomach twisted. Grigori's been caught, Erabin finally said. Well, that would explain one person missing from this meeting. His mission was a trap. He's now being held in the royal dungeons. Selena sighed through her nose. This was why she'd been awakened. She tapped a slippered foot on the marble floor. Then kill him, she said. She'd never liked Grigori, anyway. When she was 10, she'd fed his horse a bag of candy and he'd thrown a dagger at her head for it. She'd caught the dagger, of course, and ever since, Grigori had borne the scar on his cheek from her return throw. Selena knew very. Kill Grigori, demanded Sam, the young man seated at Erabin's left, a place that usually went to Ben, Erabin's second in command. Dark well what Sam Cortland thought of her. She'd known since they were children, when Erabin took her in and declared her, not Sam, to be his protégé and heir. That hadn't stopped Sam from trying to undermine her at every turn. And now, at 17, Sam was still a year older than she, and he still hadn't forgotten that he would always be second best. She bristled at the sight of Sam in Ben's seat. Ben would probably throttle Sam for it when he arrived, or she could just save Ben the effort and do it herself. Selena looked to Erabin. Why hadn't he reprimanded Sam for sitting in Ben's place? Erabin's face, still handsome despite the silver starting to show in his hair, remained impassive. She hated that unreadable mask, especially when controlling her own expressions and temper remained a tad difficult. If Grigori's been caught, Selena drawled, brushing back a strand of her long, golden hair, then the protocol's simple: send an apprentice to slip something into his food. Nothing painful, she added as the men around her tensed. Just enough to silence him before he talks, which Grigori might very well do, if he was in the royal dungeons. Most criminals who went in there never came out again. Not alive, and not in any recognizable shape. The location of the Assassin's Keep was a well-guarded secret, one she'd been trained to keep until her last breath. But even if she didn't, no one was likely to believe that an elegant manor house on a very respectable street in Riftfold was home to some of the greatest assassins in the world. What better place to hide than in the middle of the capital city? And if he's already talked? Dark challenge, Sam's eyes gave. And if Grigori's already talked? She said, then kill everyone who heard. Sam's brown flashed as she him a little smile that she knew made him irate. Selena turned to Erabin. But you didn't need to drag us here to decide this. You already gave the order, didn't I? Erabin nodded, his mouth a thin line. Sam choked back his objection and looked toward the crackling hearth beside the table. The firelight cast the smooth, elegant panes of Sam's face into light and shadow, a face, she'd been told, that could have earned him a fortune if he'd followed in his mother's footsteps. But Sam's mother had opted instead to leave him with assassins, not courtesans, before she died. Silence fell, and a roaring noise filled her cars as Erabin took a breath. Something was wrong. What else, she asked, leaning forward. The other assassins focused on the table. Whatever had happened, they knew. Why hadn't Erabin told her first? Erabin's silver eyes became steel. Ben was killed. Selena gripped the arms of her chair. What? Ben, the ever-smiling assassin who had trained her as often as Arabin had. Ben, who had once mended her shattered right hand. Ben, the seventh and final member of Arabin's inner circle. He was barely 30 years old. Selena's lips pulled back from her teeth. What do you mean, killed? Arabin eyed her, and a glimmer of grief flashed across his face. 5 years Ben senior, Arabin had grown up with Ben. They'd been trained together. Ben had seen to it that his friend became the unrivaled king of the assassins, and never questioned his place as Arabin's second. Her throat closed up. It was supposed to be Grigori's mission. Arabin said quietly, I don't know why Ben was involved, or who betrayed them. They found his body near the castle gates. Do you have his body? Dark, she demanded. She had to see him one last time, see how he died, how many wounds it had taken to kill him. No. Arabin said. Why the hell not? Dart. Her fists clenched and unclenched. Because the place was swarming with guards and soldiers. Sam burst out, and she whipped her head to him. How do you think we learned about this in the first place? Arabin had sent Sam to see why Ben and Grigori were missing. I would grab his body. Sam said, refusing to back down from her glare. It would have led them right to the keep. You're assassins, she growled at him. You're supposed to be able to retrieve a body without being seen. If I'd been there, you would have done the same. Selena pushed her chair back so hard it flipped over. If I'd been there, I would have killed all of them to get Ben's body back. She slammed her hands on the table, rattling the glasses. Sam shot to his feet, a hand on the hilt of his sword. Oh, listen to you. Ordering us about like you run the guild. But not yet, Selena. He shook his head. Not yet. Enough. Arabin snapped, rising from his chair. Selena and Sam didn't move. None of the other assassins spoke, though they gripped their various weapons. She'd seen firsthand what fights at the keep were like. The weapons were as much for the bearer's own safety as they were to prevent her and Sam from doing serious damage to each other. I said, enough. If Sam took one step toward her, drew his sword a fraction of an inch, that concealed dagger in her robe would find itself a new home in his neck. Arabin moved first, grabbing Sam's chin in one hand, forcing the young man to look at him. Check yourself, or I'll do it for you. Boy, he Oh, you, boy, he murmured. You're a fool for picking a fight with her tonight. Selena bit down on her reply. She could handle Sam tonight or any other night, for that matter. If it came down to a fight, she'd win. She always beat Sam. But Sam released the hilt of his sword. After a moment, Arabin removed his grip on Sam's face, but didn't step away. Sam kept his gaze on the floor as he strode to the far side of the council room. Crossing his arms, he leaned against the stone wall. She could still reach him one flick of her wrist, and his throat would spout blood. Selena, Arabin said, his voice echoing in the silent room. Enough blood had been spilled tonight. They didn't need another dead assassin. Ben. Ben was dead and gone, and she'd never again run into him in the halls of the keep. He'd never set her injuries with his cool, deft hands, never coax a laugh from her with a joke or a lewd anecdote. Selena, Arabin warned again. I'm done. Selena snapped. She rolled her neck, running a hand through her hair. She stalked to the door, but paused on the threshold. Just so you know, she said, speaking to all of them but still watching Sam, I'm going to retrieve Ben's body. A muscle feathered in Sam's jaw, though he wisely kept his eyes averted. But don't expect me to extend the same courtesy to the rest of you when your time comes. With that, she turned on her heel and ascended the spiral staircase to the manor above. 15 minutes later, no one stopped her when she slipped out the front gate and into the silent city streets.